The nation's fourth largest city remains largely underwater Tuesday as officials in Houston deal with historic flooding. Torrential rains have killed several people, with dozens still not accounted for. Water levels rose high enough to partially submerge cars and trap people in their homes. 24 counties in Texas have been declared disaster areas. In addition to the human toll, state officials will face a financial toll on the state's $1.5 trillion economy, and they are not alone when it comes to severe weather. We're now joined by Accuweather senior meteorologist Bernie Rayno. Bernie, thank you for joining us. Bernie?
Yes, so we're there.
Sorry about that. I hope the weather didn't get you.
Oh, no. It's certainly not the flooding. It's a beautiful day in State College, although it feels a little bit more like July than it does the end of May.
Yeah, we feel that in New York as well. What is driving the flooding? This, they say, is historic. Can you kind of put it in terms for us?
Well, you know what? And we've talked about this before. And we've seen this happen before in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. When you get into the southern plain states, including Texas, when you have drought, most droughts are ended by floods. Mm-hmm. And this is the pattern that we've seen over the last month of May. Remember, we had exceptional drought across much of North Texas. It's been lingering over the last couple of years. Well, this weather pattern that we've seen in May, strong energy coming into the West Coast, has just brought storm after storm after storm into Texas. And unfortunately, this is the way you end droughts in Texas, and that's exactly what we've seen. Nearly a foot of rain so far this month in Houston, nearly a foot of rain in Dallas. Meanwhile, Oklahoma City is closing in on 19 inches of rain in this month, and during the month of May. And unfortunately, this is the way most droughts end, with floods. And I'm already sending you the warning bell right now. California may be next.
I was going to ask you that. I mean,
don't get much rain this time of
day. Yeah, Bernie, Californians would say they'd welcome the water, but will they welcome what's coming?
Well, I mean, that's the way it works in California, too. The way you end droughts are not, it's going to take a couple of years to end the drought in California. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to end this winter. But unfortunately, when you get a pattern setting up similar to what we have in Texas, we may get a similar pattern this winter in California. And when it rains in California, it pours, and unfortunately, with this developing El Nino, depending on the strength of it, that will increase the probability in the Southern California. And when it rains in California, it generally pours, and you're going to see flash flooding. But I can tell you this: as bad as things are in Texas with this flooding, drought is far, far worse of an economic disaster than flooding, because usually flooding is in a smaller area and it doesn't last as long.
And drought has a long-lasting impact. We know that there are costs directly related to the cleanup, for example, but what are some of the unforeseen costs that we're seeing with the flooding, that we're seeing with the violent weather in the Midwest?
Well, it's interesting. Severe weather is actually below normal. Not many people would believe that, but the numbers suggest that it's well below normal. Rain has been the biggest impact of these thunderstorms so far. And as far as the drought, it hurt crops, and now a lot of fields may be underwater. The ground is saturated, so that's going to have a toll as well. And as you mentioned, you have the cleanup, which is going to be costing quite a bit of money as well.
You mentioned El Nino. From what I understand, we may have an unusually hot summer this summer. Is that what you're forecasting, and what is the impact of that?
Well, El Nino has bigger impacts in the winter months than the summer. And in the winter months, it's generally warmer. Generally, listen, and it all depends on where the warm water ends up being, but generally when you do have an El Nino, the stronger it is, the better bet that it is going to be a warm winter, but it also means that it's going to be a relatively wet winter, and especially along the West Coast, and I think that we are due for a strong El Nino. We haven't had a real strong one since 1998, moderate one in 2012 and 10, and ever since it switched, that's when the drought started in California, when we went away from that moderate El Nino back in 2010. So I think we're due in California, and I think what you see in Texas right now, that may be replayed this winter in California.
All right, we'll have to look for that. Bernie Rayno from Accuweather, thank you, my friend. Always good to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, sir.